Hello, it's Tom, and today we're going to take a look at this very interesting and unusual houseplant. It's Marimo Moss Balls. Marimo is an aquatic plant, so it does not need soil or potting mixes to grow in. All it needs from you is water and ideally a clear container or vessel. You want to be able to see their beauty, basically, so you need something that's see-through or glass. Other than that, they're pretty much straightforward and easy going. Now, there are problems, there are issues. These plants natively grow in cold lakes around the world in some key locations. They don't grow everywhere, only certain places. And our homes aren't lakes and they're not cold. So you can run into problems if you try and keep these plants indoors. Now, they can be overcome. They don't require anything too complicated or difficult. Most people should be able to grow them indoors successfully. I've had these plants, these ones, and I've got these ones here. They've been growing for about 4 years now. So I have some things to talk about, and this video might be too long if I do that. So I'll do a separate video with issues. This video will be about the care and how to look after them and what to expect. So the two essential things that we need to get right are light and temperature. So I'm going to cover those first, because that's what you need to get correct. And most problems are triggered by an incorrect lighting level or an incorrect temperature. They are growing. Think about where they're growing. So we talked earlier about the lakes. They're growing underneath the water and a little bit further down. They are not wanting or growing in bright light locations. All right. So they want medium light levels or even low light. They will grow in that as well, which gives us an idea of where we should position them in our homes. Essentially, they can go anywhere, but not in sun. Okay. So bright locations are going to be too much, and full sun is absolutely no way. Do not do that. The reason why is because direct sunlight on a glass or even a plastic container is going to heat it up. It's going to make it hot. They don't like hot temperatures. They don't want direct sun. The sun can also severely damage them as well. They're not adapted to full sunlight. They do want some shade, or rather than shade, more like lower light levels, and that's what you should be aiming for. That might sound restricted, but it's not. There's so many places in your home you can grow them. You could grow them practically anywhere. So a little trick that I picked up to see if you had the right location in terms of light is to look at the moss balls during the daylight. So when there's light coming around and when it's hitting them, they will be photosynthesizing. And because it's in water, because they're growing in water, the gases that are produced can be seen. Like all plants will photosynthesize, but you just don't see the gas because they're in the air. But in the water, you can see little bubbles forming, which is a telltale sign of what's happening. So you know the plant is active. That's good, that's fine. What you want to see is probably just a handful, just a couple of bubbles, and that's probably absolutely perfect. You have problems when there's loads of bubbles. If there's too many bubbles for you to count, but it's too bright, there's too much light. And if you keep that on for too long, you're going to stress the moss balls out, and you could end up with all kinds of issues. Browning, white, some of it can go bleached as well. So you need to sort of get that balance. So a couple of air bubbles, absolutely fine. If there's more than you can count, it's too bright. Okay, so moving quickly on to the temperature, which we've just sort of covered. They want cold temperatures. Water and in a jar will always heat up to the temperature of the room. That's just how it works. So you're going to struggle in temperature, in the summer and things like that. When it is naturally warmer in your rooms, this is going to get hot too. Now, the most I would even think about going up to is probably 25 degrees, which I think is around 78 Fahrenheit, is around that sort of temperature. That's the absolute maximum level. I would not want to even be reached that ideally, but that's probably it. Anything more than that, you're going to run into problems. So you need the temperature to be cooler. If you have a heat wave or something and it's temporary, you might even want to put these plants somewhere cooler. You might want to move them to a cool location or cool room. You can even put them in your fridge. Yes, you can. I would leave it in the vessel, but you can just pop them in the fridge. They don't mind. They don't like freezing temperatures. Avoid that sort of thing. But in a fridge, that's not freezing. Okay, so they should be okay in a fridge for a few days as well. Clearly, it's not long term because there's no light in the fridge, and that's not what you want. But if you're trying to avoid the extreme heat, that's an option. Moving on to water. So generally speaking, it's quite straightforward. They will grow happily in tap water. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need anything specialist. I have seen many people saying that they will use carbonated water. That's fine as well. If you would like to do that, that's not a problem. It doesn't, for me, I don't, you're not going to get super, whatever you do, you're not going to get super crazy growth on these these plants, they are extremely slow growing. We're talking half a millimeter a year at best, at best. They are extremely slow growing plants. Okay, you probably from year to year you will not see them growing. You buy these plants for how they look. People aren't buying them to grow them big. You could do that, but you're talking decades to get big. Carbonated water is going to be okay if you would like to use that. Tap water is fine too. In terms of changing the water, so that is a reasonably controversial topic, but mainly it's going to depend on your circumstances. It's argued that best practice is to change the water every week, but I have experimented with doing that, and I've experimented with leaving them for a very long time, and we're talking maybe 2 or 3 months without changing the water. I can't tell a difference. I can't tell anything bad happening in either situation. Change the water how you need to. Okay. Now, the main reason I will change the water, and this is what I'm going to recommend because this has been my experience, is when the water is dirty. When there's other algae growing on the actual jar, that's when it's time to change it up. So I find that in a sealed container, which is this one, they're sealed. So the water's in, it's sealed. Okay. They seem to last longer between water changes. I do have one growing, and I've grown them previously without a lid. So it's just an open container like that. So it's just open. I find that needs to be changed more often. I imagine it's because things are going inside and air's mixing, and it's just causing a more active environment. So algae grows and it needs to be changed more regularly. I also find if you grow them in a very sort of warm and brighter location, again, as we talked about, not full sun, but a brighter location, they seem to be, again, this seems to be the same thing. More algae grows and it needs to be changed more regularly. So generally speaking, I would change my water more often in the summer months than I do in winter as a guide. Let's talk a little bit about maintenance for these plants. Now, when you are changing the water, that's the ideal time to do some maintenance. It's really easy, it's really straightforward, and this is what you're probably going to come across. So over time, the balls will slightly lose their shape. They may become less round, and that's just normal because they're static. Now, I have seen some videos already of people saying that they will constantly rotate their plants like this. It's good. That's a good thing to do because in their native habitat, they're in a lake. They are moving around. The water is moving, and they are rolling around the base, the bottom of the ground. They're rolling around, and they're keeping their little circular shape, which is ideal. It's natural. So when people are suggesting that you do that, that's completely true. I have no problems with that whatsoever. If you can rotate the water occasionally, you're going to make them spin around, and you're going to give them that natural sort of rotation. Reality, that's not what happens. Okay. So it's all given advice in a good way, but 90% of people probably don't do that. 95% of people probably do not rotate their plants every single day because you just forget about it. You just forget about them. It's just normal. It's just human nature. They will lose their shape. If you are one of these very unusual people who do rotate their plants every time, this isn't a problem for you. But let's the rest of us, okay? They're going to lose their shape over time. So when you change the water, we want to do two things. We want to wash the plants, and we also want to bring them back into their circular shape. So when the water's been changed, when they're out, what you're going to do is put them in your hands, and you can just gently, 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 don't be harsh, there's no need to apply lots of pressure. You just want to gently sort of squeeze out any water from inside. And sometimes that water's dirty, and you can see it's dirty. You want it out. So just give it a gentle squeeze and to clean them inside. At the same time, because they're kind of dry at this point, or dry-ish, you can also rotate them in your hand to give them that sort of circular shape, restore their shape. And what you'll do is you just gently put them between your fingertips and just roll them as though you're rolling a little ball. Just a little bit, really gently, and they'll be back into their shape. You might not think it's doing much, you might think it's not actually done anything, but actually it has. There's a massive difference. I will try and show you some before and after so you can get an idea. So just that couple of, 30 seconds, maybe a minute of rolling can completely transform and put the moss ball back into its sort of familiar shape. And that's it. Into the vase it goes again with the clean water. Now, when you do that, it may float. Okay, you may have introduced air into the center of the plant, so you may get it floating. Now, you could squeeze it again and it should sink, but I wouldn't really worry about it. It will sink naturally after a day or two, and it will go back to the bottom, which is fine. That's what you want. Humidity, you don't need to worry about that. Forget it, because it's 100% humidity is what they want. This is what they're getting. Done. Feeding. Again, as I said, they do not grow fast. There is no real reason to feed these plants a lot. I'm not saying you should never feed them because some fertilizer is always good for any plant. Basically, they need it for growth and maintenance and all that stuff. So you are going to have to feed occasionally, but I'm talking really low amounts. 1 drop of liquid fertilizer a year is what I do. 1 drop, leave it in there for a few days, empty the water. The reason for that is because these plants don't like high fertilizer. Okay, that's the number one thing that can cause problems in their native habitat. So they are endangered in some places of the world, and the scientific explanation that's been proposed and generally accepted is because where they're growing has become highly fertile. Fertilizers and things like that have been washed into the lakes where they're growing. So too much feed can actually be harmful. So you only need an absolutely tiny amount. That's it, and that's absolutely fine. So that's probably it for Marimo. I think we've covered the main topics. I hope I've given you a little understanding of how to look after them and what to expect. As I said right at the start, I am going to do a problem video as well because they do come across issues and they're a little bit more complicated to explain. So I'm going to do a separate video to stop this one going on for too long. I will do it soon, probably my next video actually, and in doing so, I will update the description below, and there'll be a link in there. And if you're watching this video and this one's been published a little while ago, then it's in there already. Go and check it out. And if you have any other issues, of course, ask me on that video or ask me in this one. I'll do my best to help. But thank you very much for tuning in today. Let me know if you have these plants, how you grow them. Send me your photos. Show me what you do with your moss balls. I want to have a look. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one.